Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of Citizens Fiber.
Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. Here now is your host, Jennifer Mealy, Chief Communications Officer and Managing Director of Evangelization of the Diocese of Greensburg.
Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections, powered by Citizens Fiber. This is Lora Kay, WHJB Morning Show host, with a special edition of Community Connections today. I am speaking with PA State Trooper Stephen Limani. Thanks for being with me today, Trooper.
Are you kidding me? It's my pleasure.
Okay. And how would you like me to address you each time?
Steve is great. I can go with that.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking time to talk with us about the importance of something that's starting up again now, our children heading back to class. Last year was really different with COVID measures in place. So this year, students are actually heading back to in-person instruction. And that means that we as a community have to become used to those safety guidelines again with things like school bus safety. Trooper Limani is here to address how we can safeguard our students and keep them safe. So let me just kind of get a feel from you. What's the top concern where safety for our school children is concerned for this year?
So I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about we're coming back and we're going to have in-person school and these buses are going to be out and about, right? Because last year, obviously, with being in the pandemic, and I know we're still kind of in that situation, but I think our motorists really got taken back by not seeing school buses. Right, yes. So their morning commutes, their afternoon commutes, really weren't being impeded by school buses. And I think as law enforcement, one of the things we're concerned about is you're talking about some school districts that maybe are a year and a half, 2 years almost. It seems like where someone hasn't approached or been behind a school bus. And we're starting back in these next few days. The majority of the school districts will be back in session, if not by next week for sure. And our main concern is trying to reintegrate our drivers with hey, I'm leaving to go to work or I'm coming home from work. I got to pay attention to these school bus signs, right? And there's probably going to be a school bus on my route to work. And we need to add some time and make sure that we're aware that these things are going to be happening in the very near future, because the last thing we want to do is have an accident take place where somebody gets hurt, whether it be a child, a person just driving their vehicle, because the school buses in general are pretty safe vehicles. But still, we don't want anybody to get hurt. And the last thing, we're not out to write tickets, right? Like our goal is not to go out and write everybody a ticket, although it might seem like it sometimes, right?
Right.
We're not out there trying to hammer the public and write them tickets. However, when it comes to school buses, we are very strict when it comes to approaching, passing, things of that nature when it comes to the school bus. And the last thing we want to do to get compliance, though, is to write the citation. It's just for awareness and for people to obey the laws and obey the rules and things of that nature.
Well, and this is kind of getting off the track of specifically school bus safety, but as a trooper, what have you seen as a change in traffic patterns or traffic issues over the past year when not as many people were out on the roads? We had a lot of things that were different. How did our driving practices change? What did you see?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we first had the pandemic, we talked about people staying at home and what are we going to do when it comes to not leaving our houses? It was eerie. Mm-hmm. You're driving around and there's
nobody there.
Very limited amount of vehicles. Right. So you saw a reduction in crashes, which is great, right? That was. I hate saying there was good things that came from the pandemic, but looking back, I think any business and, the state police, I don't want to really think of us as a business, but basically, we're an entity that operates somewhat like a business when it comes to taking care of logistics, right? What's the logistics of the state police? What's the business aspect of the state police? We are in the business of customer service. Mm-hmm. People don't think of it that way. Being as the public relations officer, I fully am invested as we are basically a public service industry, right? We're there to provide safety for the general public. And when there's somebody that breaks the law, whether it be speeding or in this case, we're talking about school buses, whether they're breaking the violations of the school bus when it comes to approaching or passing or just disobeying in general, some of the traffic laws when it comes to students. We also have the approaching of the school bus zones, or the school zones, right, where people are driving towards the school, and there's zones. There's going to be flashing lights.
Right.
Well, there might not have been some of those things because kids weren't actually at school, right? They were staying home and they were learning from home. So there's a lot of things that have taken place over the course of this pandemic, and now that we're sort of heading out of it, it's really important on our end to do a little bit of an educational lesson to our motors, just to remind them that things that are happening. And you're going to have people that never had a driver's license before, right? That are now driving. They haven't driven because they were 15 or 16 years old just getting their license, and they're not used to anyone being on the roads during this time of year because they didn't drive during the time that school was in session.
Okay, maybe a crazy question for you. Do you think motorists became more selfish over the last year with the pandemic as related to their driving practices?
Yeah, what I do think happened is that people started to see that there was less traffic on the road, and their driving commutes, especially for long distance, right, shrunk because there's no traffic.
Yes.
Right? So I think that's definitely something that we have to be concerned about as law enforcement, and also the fact that there's a certain kind of level of anxiety that comes over drivers when all of a sudden there's more vehicles on the road. And I think it's commonly referred to as road rage, right?
Yes.
Amongst people.
A lot of that lately.
Yes, right, because everyone's back to driving. We have the roads are filled with people, the weather, especially in the summertime in general. You have people that just go for a ride, right, on their motorcycles, things of that nature. So you went from last summer to being, I don't want to say locked in your house, so to speak, but a lot of people didn't leave because of the safety issue, and then obviously from the government aspect, they asked you to sort of stay home. To now, you have people that are just out joyriding and trying to enjoy the weather, their motorcycles,
the freedom of being out.
Absolutely, yes. Right, the freedom of being out. So definitely that's one of our concerns. Have we had road rage sort of come back, to so to speak? Yes, we've had people that more of that type of complaint has come our way. It definitely wasn't happening during the pandemic, so to speak. But so those are all things as a law enforcement organization we're adjusting to and conducting our business as community service business. So
right. Okay. So that was pretty interesting. Let's kind of lead this back into specifically school safety. So how are the state police getting involved in school safety?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that people don't know the state police does is every year we are at the bus garages way before school even starts. And we actually do an inspection of every single bus. So before your child is going to step foot on that bus, there was a trooper, and we have these troopers that are specifically trained for commercial vehicles. And they're climbing under the bus, looking at all the different mechanical items under the bus to make sure that they're in good working order, checking the other parts of it, like is the bus rusted out? Are there different areas that might be of concern because the frame or the integrity of the bus can be compromised? And they move from that part of the inspection to the electronical part of the inspection, where they're checking to make sure all the lights are being activated and they're working appropriately, to make sure the arms and the different other safety features of the bus are working correctly. And then also making sure the safety mechanics inside the bus are working, right? So can they escape from the windows if they had to? Can they open the back hatch and open that back door and make sure that that's accessible? So those are all the different things that we do way before school even starts. And I think that's probably a surprise to a lot of people to know, wait, you have the state police are actually at the school bus garages?
I did not know that.
No, they don't. And I think that's important for people to know that. And one of the things that, and we try to get people to do this, I mean, your child is safer by 70 times, according to the National Highway Safety Initiative, 70 times less likely to be injured and involved in any type of real crash if they ride the school bus, as opposed to you taking them as a parent.
Wow.
70 times. That's an insane.
That's a lot.
That's an insane number of how much safer your child is on a school bus. So let's talk about correlating that into, when I talk to the worst thing, right, is death. And if you talk about the death of children, it is 100% the largest cause of death is traffic crashes for children, right? So, and if you talk about what is the average number of children that are involved in a traffic crash that's fatal in when it comes to a school bus, it fluctuates between 4 and 6 children about every single year. That's it, 4 to 6. If you think about all the kids that are getting on a school bus, all the kids that are driving back and forth, all the different schools, how often people are on school, they're not just on the school bus during the school time. They're traveling to sporting events. They're coming back from sporting events. It's late at night sometimes when you're coming back from the football game that's an hour away. And you're talking about only 4 children during the course of an entire year that are involved in a fatal crash, like that's an incredibly low number, right? First of all, having any loss of life is horrible, right? Let's be realistic. So 0 is the perfect number. But if you want to take the statistics and how many people actually do die in a crash, to say that only 4 to 6, we would employ that every single person, please have your child ride the bus. And then talk about some safety protocols when you're getting on and off the bus. I mean, we could talk about that too, maybe later in this story if you want, but those are the things I think are important for people to understand. And those are the things that we work hand in hand with the school buses and the school districts to make sure that these buses that are traveling and grabbing your children and taking them back and forth to school, they are as safe as humanly possible.
No, that's perfect. And I love the fact that they're checking the buses. I had no idea that was a job of the state police. Yeah. So that's incredible. Now, are there special guidelines maybe this year that parents need to know about school safety?
Yeah, so I think that the focus of this particular year is the reintegration, right, of the fact that, hey, the school buses are back in session, and we have to make sure that we're being very careful when it comes to driving the children around. The other part is that each district has their own measures when it comes to safety on the bus and about the cleanliness of the buses, right, and about the fact that people are worried about possibly the spread or transmission of a virus. So will there be different seating arrangements on the bus? Are you going to sit in the same seat so that, God forbid, somebody does come back and say, you know what, I my child tested positive for COVID. Maybe they showed no symptoms, and they were seated on the second seat on the bus. Does that child always sit on the second seat on the bus so that there's a less likelihood of transmission? And does that person always have the same people on either side of that child? So now you're talking about contact tracing, right? So do we only have to notify those particular 2 kids because the other kids are so far away, and they're always so far away? So that's one of the things that'll be talked about between all the different school districts to see what they plan on doing and what their plan would be in place when children are getting on and off the bus. And
that is a different plan is made by each school district. That's their right. They create that plan, and it's just specific to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the district, so that's not something that the state police is going to come in. We're going to make sure the bus is safe and that it's in good working order and that the mechanical functions are all available that won't cause any type of injury or added injury or would compromise the bus in case it's involved in a crash. The school district will talk to each one of their board members and analyze all the data they have and then make a decision based on the information they're able to have available to them, and then make a decision, should we always have the same kid sitting in the same seat? Are we a district that has such a low volume of any type of reporting of any type of disease when it comes to the pandemic part of it? For the virus, then maybe we don't have this issue. Or maybe we're in a high rate. Hey, listen, there was 2 or 3 different kids that rode this particular bus. Maybe we need to do something or take different measures. So that's something that's going to be on a district basis and probably even within the district, probably a school basis, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Each particular school. You're talking about some of the districts here. They have 5, 6, 7 different schools that kids are going to, right? So we'll be and we'll be working with them, right? So because our part would be is if there's non-compliant people that aren't complying with the rules that the school is putting in place, and then there's an irate parent and that person's not conducting their concerns in an appropriate manner, right? We don't like whether they're being threatening or argumentative towards somebody. That's something where we would get involved in as a law enforcement organization, but we wouldn't get involved in setting up the school rules, so to speak. That was something that the administrators would do.
And I know right now, especially on the news, you hear about the mask mandates varying from school district to school district. And I guess at this point so far, the schools themselves are the ones that are allowed to make that choice. So you're probably going to find different rules as you move through the school districts. Okay, so what do you think, let's get back to motorists, what's the most important factor for someone driving a car in the morning or in the afternoon to remember?
Absolutely. So I love talking about this. So my background, not only being the public relations officer for the state police, my background with the state police I was on the road for 10 years, but one of the side jobs I did, I was an accident reconstructionist. So I love talking about it. Well, definitely seen a lot, and all the classes that I've taken, and I teach a lot of stuff about crashes and crash prevention. It's speed, right, and distance. It boils down to those two things. And if you always take care of speed and distance, the possibility of you being a crash is it's almost zero. That has to, somebody has to make a horrible decision to hit you for you to be involved in a crash. As long as you maintain speed, and what I mean by speed is you have to be traveling at a speed that you can have complete control of your vehicle, regardless of the situation. So sometimes that speed might be 10 miles an hour, right, because of inclement weather or visibility, right? So that speed definitely changes. It might be 65, 70 miles an hour on a desert road where you're traveling across Arizona, right? Because you can see forever.
Right.
So besides a tumbleweed, like what can possibly cause problems? It'd be a malfunction in your vehicle, right? So the fact of you being in a crash that would be serious or could hurt you, it gets minimized. So therefore, the speed that you can travel goes up.
And I've been talking with PA State Trooper Stephen Limani. We are going to come back to this conversation. We're discussing school safety and motorists and keeping our children safe. And we'll be right back after this.
This is Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. If you have a suggestion for a topic, or if your nonprofit organization would like to be featured on this program, call us during regular business hours at 724-216-1200.
Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of Citizens Fiber.
And we're back. This is Lora Kay with a special edition of Westmoreland Community Connections. My guest today, PA State Trooper Stephen Limani. I guess I'm supposed to call you Steve.
I like Steve better.
Okay, no Stephen anymore. And Steve, you've been talking with me about, quite interestingly, about school safety, about motorists, about trends in driving, but mostly just keeping our students safe this year and things that we have to keep in mind. Now, we were talking before the break of the most important factor for motorists to remember, and you had mentioned that it was speed and distance. So let's pick back up on that.
Well, motorists love when I talk about you can drive faster, right? So they absolutely love when you say something like that. So the absolute speed when it comes to driving is where we were talking about. And definitely when you're on those open roads, and that's why the speed limit's different. And I think that if people understand there's a reason why the speed limits are in place, right? They're there to protect us. They're there to try and make driving safe. So if you are able to monitor your speed and then also include the inclement weather that you might be experiencing, especially in southwestern Pennsylvania, right? We could experience
Too much.
Yes, we could experience 4 seasons in one day, right? So no, that's definitely going to change. And when you talk about distance, and we talk about a safe following distance. So, and I try and tell people, like, do you really think by creeping up closer to that car that you're going to get wherever you're going faster? The answer to the question is absolutely not, right? Like, it's not happening.
No. And that is my pet peeve when I'm driving, is someone driving up on my back bumper.
Yes.
I don't see the need for it, and it makes me nervous and stressed out as a motorist.
Yes, it is the number one cause of road rage. I try and explain to people, so, and it really, if you think about it, when you're the lead vehicle and you're in a passenger car and you put another car behind you, and if it's an SUV or a truck, now automatically, where are those headlights? Right in your rearview mirror, right? Because you're lower than they are, and here they got these lights just humming in your eyes. So now the general idea of the lead vehicle is this car must be tailgating me, which they might be closer than they should be. Most likely they are. Mm-hmm. So the lead vehicle, out of frustration, wants to tell the person behind them, hey, you're falling too close. So what does the lead vehicle do?
Slow down.
Do they slow down, or do they slow down
up?
Abruptly?
Oh.
Yes, you act like you don't know.
Really? I
you
never
slow
tried
down
that,
abrupt.
Steve.
Yeah, right. You slow down abruptly. It's great because I'll say it in a group, and inherently I get my road rage person that's there. Yeah, I just give them a brake check. Right? Because they hit the brakes abruptly. So that has the trail vehicle that's behind them, right? So what's the first thing the trail vehicle thinks? Oh, I must be following too close to this car. You know what? I think I'm going to give a better safe following distance, and I'm going to move my vehicle further away so we can both enjoy traveling down this country road.
Really? Is that really what they're thinking? No.
No, 100% that's not what happens, right? Okay. So then they end up making it look like, I'm going to make it look like my vehicle is being towed by the vehicle in front of me, right? And so therefore, and it's instantaneous. And that all takes place in a matter of about 5 to 10 seconds, and then we have road rage. right? So like that's exactly what happens. I try and tell people like, listen, you're not happy, like they're not happy. You're like don't even know each other, and you're like ruining each other's day. Just move over. If you're not happy with how the vehicle is behind you traveling, just like pull over, let them go by, right? They'll go by, they'll annoy the next car in front of them, right? And you'll just be able to travel behind them. And what could even be better is hopefully they start to speed and there's a trooper up there running radar. Right? Like how much better can it get than that? Right. So that would be my suggestion when it comes to that scenario. It happens more often than you could ever imagine. And that's usually the start of the road rage is distance. So whenever I'm teaching people the class about safety and driving safety, it is definitely speed and it is definitely distance. And if you keep track of those two things while you're driving at all times, make sure that, hey, listen, there's plenty of room between me and the car ahead of me. And you maintain that, you will the likelihood of you being a crash that's your fault is almost zero. It's just not going to happen.
Now, specifically, I know there are certain rules with school buses, how close we are allowed to travel to them, and when they stop, how far away we have to be from them. So why don't you give me a little bit of details on that?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the actual numbers. I try not to focus on them because I feel like if I tell somebody that, when they're driving, they're like, well, I have to be 10 feet. You know, was approaching a school bus, you have to stop within 10 feet, right? So I feel like the people driving up, they're like, well, first of all, how many people know exactly what 10 feet looks like, right? So, I mean, you have an idea if you think of how high a basketball hoop is, or is there some things in your house maybe that you could try and equate the 10 feet to? But I feel like people are like, well, I'll just gun it instead of worrying about stopping, right, of the 10 feet. Like, I feel like that's kind of like the mindset. And so it is 10 feet you're supposed to stop when you're approaching a vehicle, and that's the one that I'm most concerned about. That's the more dangerous one, right, because you're coming at the bus. And the buses, for the most part, try and let off on the side that the children are getting off of. But in all reality, it's unrealistic. Sometimes they'd be doing loops all over the place if they always had to let the children out that were on the right side. Right. So you'll have children, and we always employ them for the children to please cross in front of the bus so that they get off the bus. They don't run behind it to get off. They go out in front of the bus, and all the buses are equipped with an arm. So the arm sticks out into opposing traffic as a reminder. And that's one of the things that, on a side note, that's one of the things that we're going to be focusing on is the cameras are going to be installed soon. So we've been working with, yes, exactly, right? So we're going to be working with some different organizations that are installing cameras on these buses. Some already have cameras, and they're not just on the arm. They're facing the back and the front of the bus to help get license plates, things of that nature. So back to the kids exiting and the people approaching the bus. So we want the children to get off the bus, cut in front of the bus, right, to exit. We try and tell the kids, hey, listen, you know, they're excited, especially when they're getting off the bus. On the bus, not so much, right? You know what I mean? They're getting off the bus.
Getting on and skipping getting off.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, exactly. Like Fred Flintstone down the back of the dinosaur, right? You have a deal, right? So that's how the kids are. So you drop something, your pencil, whatever, get the bus driver's attention, make sure they acknowledge you, pick up the item you need to pick up, right? And then proceed and still look both ways. Right, still kind of take a peek, make sure there's not a knucklehead that's coming from behind the bus that for some reason was driving so fast they're going to try and pass it. And also the approaching traffic. The bus drivers are very good at making sure that the opposing traffic is stopped before they even open the door.
Yes.
Right. So unfortunately, we live in an area in southwestern Pennsylvania. Not all the roads are straight. So there's a lot of curves going on. So there's a good chance that a bus driver can stop. There's no cars coming at all. You know, by the time they open the door, they're emptying 5 or 6 children off into the side of the road. And by the time they get off the bus, here's an approaching vehicle, right? And it's too late. They didn't get a chance to make sure there was a car that stopped first. So there's a little bit of that safety concern as well. So those are the things that are most important, and it is 10 feet. And our concern is, listen, if you stopped at 8 feet, right, stop. You know, right? It's not, like there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And 99% of us that are out there, like, we're just focused on that you're complying, right? We get it. You came around a corner. You know, maybe the speed limit was 35. You were doing 40, right? So you started to stop, right? You were going to stop. Just if you make the effort to stop and you stop there. We're
not going to measure with a measuring stick. Was that 10 feet?
Right. That's not what we're there for, right? You stopped. And now that you stopped, the great thing for the bus driver is he knows that if another car is coming around that corner, you've created a barrier with your vehicle to protect these little children that are going to be walking across the road. Right now, we don't want you getting hit, but you just made it so that these children have a safety net because they have the bus on the one side of the road, they have your vehicle on the other side of the road. So if there's some other motorist that's not doing a good job, not paying attention, not doing any of the things that we covered in the first segment, right? They're not doing those things. Well, you just saved those children by creating a barrier with your vehicle.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And let me ask you the difference between, a lot of the small towns around here, of course, we have two-way traffic.
Yep.
So you have a car stopping behind the bus and a car stopping in front of the bus. What if there's a divider between? What are the rules then? It's
a great question. We get that question asked constantly. So some of our areas I could talk specifically about when you're talking about two-way traffic, if you're using Youngwood, for example, where the traffic is traveling on 119, it's actually one of our most dangerous areas where we have one of the most amount of violations, by the way. It's because it's two-way traffic and they think that their bus is stopping on the right. They see the children on the one side of the highway that's on the right also, so they're going to get on the bus, and these people on the left are going to proceed to go past it. Absolutely not, right? Against the law. You're with traffic, you're traveling on a two-lane highway. That's called a highway for us, a two-lane highway roadway for the general public, and traffic is going in the same direction. If there's a barrier, so let's talk more specifically about a roadway that many people will be very familiar with. So for some reason, somebody's on Route 30, right? And we have a concrete barrier, and somebody's picking up a child on the side of the road. Well, that concrete barrier is a divider. You're allowed to continue to move freely on the other side of the highway. You can continue to drive. You see that bus. That is a divided highway with a physical barrier that is preventing the entrance of people without them doing some kind of American Ninja Warrior move, right? To get over to the other side. Right. So that would prohibits the person from jumping over there. Like that kind of puts the fault on them. No one should be jumping over. They're not getting let off. The schools aren't designed to allow children to go across any type of barrier, right? So you have the ability to continue to move freely. If there is no divide, right, and you are in an area where there's two-way traffic, and sometimes there's even maybe there's two lanes on one side and only one lane on the other, everyone's required to stop because there's no divide.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And if you think it through, it will make sense. And if you think it through while you're driving, it can make sense. But sometimes when you're driving, and if you're going 40 miles an hour, you don't really have that much time to think. So I would suggest as you're driving, and maybe that's what's great about this segment is that we're giving you food for thought, right? This is like a food for thought segment on how to be safer, how to keep everyone safe. Because I think, even the people that are driving, the last thing you want to do is make a child feel scared because you almost hit them, or a parent feel scared because, oh my God, my children are getting off a school bus, and so you don't want to do that as a motorist. No one wants to do that to a child. Period. And the last part about that is the fine's not very friendly.
It's a lot. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. The fine itself is set by that's set by PennDOT. We don't. I mean, I can tell you what the fines are. We don't set them. We just write them on the paper, right? So it's $250 is the fine for that. But it's the 60-day license suspension that's the real kick in the pants.
Right.
So that's the thing that people, some of them, they find out the hard way. Oh my God, there's a license suspension with this, right? And probably one of the, I don't want to say the coolest things about the section, the way it's written, but probably the best thing about the section, the way it's written, is it doesn't have to be initiated by a police officer. Because how often are we there, right? Everyone always says, "Oh, geez, I wish there was a trooper here," when they saw this knucklehead driving, right? I wish there was why? Because they're never.
I say that at 4:30 in the morning.
Right, exactly, right. And that's usually when we're trying to deal with some drunk that it was really on a bender. We have him at the hospital. But yeah, so people think that. And the great part is that within 48 hours, in writing, the school bus driver can initiate that citation. We write that citation based on information received. The school bus driver obviously is going to come to the hearing with any either physical evidence they have, if they have video cameras, or any notes they may have taken because they saw the violation happen.
And coming up, they'll have a lot of video.
Correct. We're going to have lots more video. Or if they have an eyewitness account, because there's a lot of parents at bus stops. Maybe students saw something. Students did a great job, and they were able to get information, right? There's a lot of eyes on the school bus, or eyes outside of the school bus, or other motorists that may have seen this horrible driving action, right? So, and then we can go to the hearing with that information, And subsequently, it's a hefty fine and it's a license suspension. And our goal is not to punish. Our goal is to gain compliance, not punish. But unfortunately, sometimes there's a punishment that has to go along with your actions.
I think that those things go hand in hand. And you've given us so much important information today. This is Lora Kay, again, WHJB Morning Show host. And this segment of Community Connections has been with PA State Trooper Steve Limani. And thank you so much for being with us. He's provided some great information on school bus safety and actually just driving safety, period. So thank you for joining us again. And I appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me on the air. It was a pleasure. I hope that we were able to give some good information. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you back in the dancing studios once again, because I got to see you dancing. I thought you did a great job. For those of you that didn't know on air, she is a very accomplished, in all kinds of arts, but definitely in dancing.
Well, thank you. But we're going to hold off on judgment on that.
Hey, the green room works both ways. When you're interviewing me, I'm interviewing you as well.
Oh, my goodness. All right. And this Westmoreland Community Connections segment has been powered, as always, by Citizens Fiber.
This has been Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings in and around Westmoreland County. Join us again next week on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB.
Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of Citizens Fiber.